Hello, my name's Ben.
And my name's Josh.
And welcome back to FPL Graduates and welcome back to another video. Of course, we're getting into the blank game week of the season that we've got left. It's the biggest blank that we're going to have for the rest of the season. And we're going to be going through a free hit draft to sort of give you an idea of the sorts of players you should be looking to get in your team for this week.
Okay, so we're going to get cracking into a free hit draft that I made. Ben can give it a little slander. I'm not sure whether I will definitely have this team come the weekend. If you want to know what team I will have come the weekend, make sure you hit that subscribe button because we'll be uploading our team reveals later on this week. So in goal, Sam Johnston, Everton at home, Crystal Palace, obviously 2 wins out of 2 under Hodgson, looking really good. I thought their performance away from home at Southampton showed their quality and why they shouldn't really be in a relegation battle. Eze was looking phenomenal in that as well. Sam Johnston as well, obviously coming in, only played the last 2 fixtures, I do believe, but played quite well. 9 points for him against Southampton, made 4 saves, made 7 saves against Leeds. So, a bit of a save point magnet as well, which is really, really good to have. And if you're trying to save a bit of that budget, I know a lot of people might go with Alisson in goal potentially. He's the man to go for, only 4.4 million in net. What's your thoughts on the goalkeeper situation in Sam Johnston, Ben?
Yeah, I think it's not a bad shout to go for Sam Johnston. Obviously, the decision I think with a lot of FPL managers and a lot of managers who are free hitting this week is whether to go for the Crystal Palace goalkeeper or a Crystal Palace defender. And to be honest, the ceiling is pretty similar for both, for Johnston and someone like Mark Gay, Tyrick Mitchell, someone like that. So it's just dependent on how you're setting up your team for this free hit as to which one you go for. You've got some other decent options in there as well. You go for Bernd Leno of Fulham. I think he's a decent option. He's got definitely haul potential. He's scored 4 double-digit hauls this season. Obviously, Alisson is a potential other sort of pick that you can go for. So there are a couple of decent options that you can go for. It's just how much you want to stretch your budget to, really, as to which goalkeeper you go for.
Okay, then. So moving on to the defence, we're playing a 3-4-3 in this setup. So we'll run through our defenders now. Kieran Trippier is first. Tottenham at home. Newcastle have been distinctively quite poor, especially defensively in recent weeks. Obviously, that 3-0 loss to Villa just shows that. They're conceding quite a lot of XG, as you can see here on the app. 2 to Villa, nearly 3 to Brentford, and they came away with a win in that. So, that defence that we thought was once really, really strong is getting a bit leaky towards the back end of the season. But Kieran Trippier, as you can see, is owned by nearly 70% of players, and the players who won't be free hitting will for sure be playing Kieran Trippier this week. So what's your thoughts on the whole Trippier scenario? Is it that whole risk versus reward scenario, Ben?
I mean, there's definite rewards from Trippier if people don't have him in the free hit. I get the feeling he's going to be quite highly owned this week, maybe a little bit less so than the last couple of weeks. But I do think he's got that whole potential no matter who he plays against. And Tottenham at home, for me, that's almost a green fixture in terms of the ticker. And I think Trippier will do well. They may concede, yes, but Trippier, with the amount that he produces, even if Newcastle concede a goal, he's still usually on for bonus points. So yeah, for me, I'd definitely look at keeping him. There's a conversation to be had if you're free hitting to go with Trippier or Harry Kane. In this situation, I'm sort of leaning towards more Kieran Trippier. We'll sort of talk about the strikers later on in the video, but in terms of defensive options, there's not too much to go for. There's a slight limitation because the defensive fixtures, there's a few that we're a bit unsure of, but Trippier for me is one of the players that you're probably looking to have in your free hit team regardless.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the rest of the defence. We've gone double Liverpool in this draft. Trent Alexander-Arnold, the premium option. Konate, a cheaper option. I think both of these guys could definitely be seen in a lot of free hits this week. We'll start off with Konate. He is flagged, but he did play and start tonight against Leeds United. We were recording that whilst that sign is currently 0-0. Konate, relatively cheaper option, 4.8 million. If you're looking to get into that defense elsewhere, it's always upwards of 6 million. So he does provide good value there, but you just do know that you're only going to be getting that 6-point ceiling. So it's just whether you think that's worth it, especially with a Liverpool defense that we know historically hasn't been very good at defending. So yeah, there's that with Konate, and then on to Trent. not as good offensively this season as we've seen before. And obviously, he's been picked out liability-wise in terms of defensively. So it's just whether you think you can really hop on that bandwagon for Nottingham Forest at home. You're really, really playing the fixture this week with Liverpool. Forest haven't looked great at all. Forest away from home all season hasn't been great. What's your thoughts on Liverpool defenders, Ben? Do you think this is a week where you can get away with them being in your team?
I think so, yeah. And a lot of sort of what the stats are saying is screaming, you know what, it's not the best idea from a defensive point of view, but we all know Liverpool are so much better at home than they are away. And Trent Alexander-Arnold's underlyings haven't been too bad regardless. So I would be looking at potentially a double up on the defence. I think Robertson's also a good option, purely based on the fact Forest have been so poor away from home as well. They barely register shots on targets in matches. And I think it's going to be no different against Liverpool this weekend. So, yeah, Konate for me has got a slight ceiling to him of 6 points, and that's it. But if you can stretch the budget, and I think a lot of free hit managers, they're going to be able to stretch the budget quite a bit with this free hit, because obviously you're not putting any investment at all onto the bench. So there's always that possibility that you could go up sort of 2 million to get to Robertson. If I'm being honest, I'm not sure about Konate, but Robertson, yeah, much higher ceiling.
Okay, so we move on to the midfield, and it is stacked full of attacking options. We'll start off with the main man himself, the Egyptian king, Mo Salah. Probably going to be the most captain player this week. Nottingham Forest at home, as we've mentioned, Forest being really poor. Himself, Mo Salah, probably not up to the hype as we've seen in seasons gone by, but he has been ticking along a little bit with some returns. You see that 21-pointer against United, then obviously missed the penalty against Bournemouth, returned City. He's returning every other week. So if he doesn't return tonight against Leeds, he might return against Forest. Who knows? What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Is he just a lock as soon as you get him in on that free hit?
Yeah, I think for the fixture, Salah's got to be a lock. He's the most nailed on Liverpool player from an attacking perspective in that team. And I do think he'll be very highly owned this week. A lot will captain him as well. And you know what? His underlines haven't been too bad either over the last few weeks. Obviously, he's had some penalty misses. He's had, not really many double-digit hauls in the last sort of 10 weeks or so. But with a prime fixture like this, I just don't think you can afford to leave this guy out.
Yeah, 100%. Moving on to a secondary pick. This guy, it's a bit of a toss-up, right? This Crystal Palace midfielder situation has got all of our heads scrambled. Obviously, Elise got a hat-trick of assists the week before. Eze's got a brace this week. It's really tossing and turning. We've got Eze in on this draft. Obviously, that 16-pointer against Southampton is his highest ever FPL haul. So really, really good numbers from him. And as you can see, his last 3 weeks, 3 returns. You can't complain with that. What's your thoughts on the Crystal Palace midfielder situation, and will they be in your free hit draft, Ben?
I think it's an easy decision to make, to be honest, and it's actually not going with Eberechi Eze. For me, looking at the stats, he's massively overperforming his data at the moment, and like you can see, 2 goals off 0.78 xG. That is overperforming quite a bit, and I think in the games where he sort of scored 3 goals, he's only had sort of 3 shots in the box overall. Elise seems to be the asset that's going to tick along a lot more nicely if you're looking at sort of over a longer period of time. It's the risk, though, that it is just 1 game week. We aren't looking sort of further into the future, and picking the man on form, Eberechi Eze, could be the place to go. But from a sort of looking at the stats, it's suggesting to me that Elise is the better pick, but Eze is getting them sort of more goals. So, like you said, it's a bit of a toss-up. For me, I'd lean more towards Elise, but Eze is the one getting the goals at the moment, which is crucial.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, Eze's goals at the weekend, if you did see them, really, really good strike from outside the box. Obviously, you're going to be registering low XG, and that's what he's got in his locker a little bit. Elise does too, to be fair. They both can score from outside the box. They're both on set pieces and things like this. So it is a really, really tough decision. Is there room for both of them? I don't think so, personally. I think you're going to want other players in that midfield spot. So it's going to be really, really tough. If I'm honest, I'm leaning towards Eze. So it's a 50-50 in the Grads household. So we'll move on to the Arsenal midfielders, where it should be, hopefully, a little bit more easier to decide. Bukayo Saka up next. Obviously, missed that penalty against West Ham. But other than that, I thought he had a really, really good performance. And I thought maybe unlucky not to come away with returns. Obviously, two 1-pointers and a donut in the last 3 fixtures. I'm really happy with that because I've got away without owning him. But obviously, Ben, you're an owner of Saka. What's your thoughts on his recent performances?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I couldn't see too many returns coming in the West Ham game just because Arsenal started sitting off. If they carried on how they did in the first sort of 15, 20 minutes, he could have come away with a goal or two. Unlucky in the Liverpool game to not return, and unlucky in the Leeds game not to return. Also, we got to remember he's off the back of an 18-point haul against Palace, and he can very easily do that again. And I think Bukayo Saka is probably the most secure player in terms of minutes in that Arsenal team as well. I think a lot of free hitters are going to be put off by the blanks in the last couple, but I think that plays into Bukayo Saka's hands. And if you own him, you're going to make a lot more returns from him. So for me, I would look at definitely having Bukayo Saka in the free hit team.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the effect that Jesus has had on the distribution of the ball, especially in the attacking final third for Arsenal. Seeing a lot more attacks down that left-hand side where Martinelli, Zinchenko, etc. operate. That's just in obviously the last 2 fixtures that Jesus has played in. So whether that continues or not, we'll wait and see. But it's definitely to detrimental effect to Saka. I do think he's definitely worth having, though, on your free hit. There's nothing been said about him coming off penalties yet either. Obviously, he just missed that one, so we never know. It could be mixed up. I know Jesus has taken penalties before, so it's going to be interesting to see who gets it. But in this case, on this free hit, it shouldn't really matter because you should have the penalty taker at Arsenal. Whether it's Martinelli or not, I'm not so sure. He's up next, really cheap, really good value. Obviously, he's just been returning pretty much every single week at the minute. As you can see there, 5 weeks on the trot with returns, that 13-pointer against Liverpool as well. He's been absolutely unbelievable, keeping Trossard out of that team. Is he a lock as well, similar to Salah?
Yeah, I think he's got to be. He's sort of the best value Arsenal asset out there. And if you're looking to potentially sort of go with a lot of premiums in your free hit, Martinelli is good to own as well. 6.9 million. A plum fixture at home as well. I think he's the first sort of lock-in for any of the Arsenal assets in terms of bringing them into your free hit team this week. And also, I'd probably, if you're not on a free hit, I'd probably look at bringing him in as well if you don't already have him. By far the sort of highest ceiling of all the Arsenal midfielders in terms of his explosiveness. So, yeah, for sure, Martinelli's got to be a lock-in.
Someone who we haven't mentioned, though, Martin Odegaard, obviously scored against West Ham at the weekend. Do you think he is any better of an option than Martinelli or Saka, or would you say that those two are the top 2 dogs in terms of the midfielders?
I'd like to say that Martinelli and Saka are on the sort of top tier of Arsenal assets to own. Odegaard, although he's been very good, just below it for me, is a lot more of a creator rather than a goal scorer. Yes, he makes those sort of lung-busting runs into the box, but Martinelli and Saka are the guys that Arsenal go to when they need a goal. So, yeah, I'd say they're probably the upper tier compared to someone like Odegaard. Obviously, if you're struggling for funds, then I see no reason why you wouldn't sort of have Odegaard in there. And if that's the only way sort of you can afford to bring in the triple up of Arsenal, then, yeah, go with him. But for me, Saka's just that little bit more, a little bit better and a little bit more value for money.
To finish off the triple up of Arsenal, we're going with Gabriel Jesus up top. Obviously, just coming back from injury and he's looking in good form. 4 returns in his last 3 games. And he's not even playing 60 minutes in some of those games. So he's banging form straight away. He just looks good in that Arsenal team. It's like the piece of the puzzle that they have been missing a little bit in recent weeks. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Do you think he's really important to get, or would you look towards other forward options?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few options that you could go for in the sort of striker position this week. Obviously, you've only got 3 to pick from. I do think Jesus has got to be up there, sort of top 3 strikers to go for this week. Obviously, there are so many Arsenal assets that you can go for, and there's every possibility that Arsenal do keep the clean sheet. So if you want to spread the risk a little bit with the Arsenal team, then by all means go for a defender. But if you're looking to really attack it, Jesus would be a fantastic option to go for. Obviously, the returns he's getting fantastic. And like you said, he's that missing piece in the puzzle in the Arsenal attack. And is very much a provider as well as a really good goal scorer.
Okay, so up next is probably the most man in form in the league at the moment, potentially. Who knows? Ollie Watkins. He's absolutely done me and Ben over. at the weekend. We don't own him. He scored 16 points. Red arrows for the both of us last week. But you can't deny it. He's been in outstanding form. Just look at all these returns. In the last 6 game weeks, he's returned in all of them. In the last 8 game weeks, he's returned in 7. You can't really complain too much about that. Brentford's quite poor at the moment, Brentford, they're not actually playing too well. I think is it 5 or 6 games without a win now? Brentford away, obviously Brentford at home is a tough fixture, don't get me wrong. But Aston Villa, probably one of the most informed sides in the league right now. If I had to be leaning towards Aston Villa right now, what's your thoughts on Watkins and Aston Villa in this tough potential fixture, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, it's a player that sort of get him in. There's no risk involved in it because everyone's going to own him anyway for this week. His expected ownership, I imagine, is going to be quite high. Brentford sort of have been hit or miss this season in terms of defence. It's very much dependent with the Brentford team on what system that they come up against. And if it's a good system like Villa's one, they could potentially come unstuck. So, yeah, I'd back sort of the most informed man in the league right now. And the hauls that he's getting, he could have come away with another 16 points against Newcastle. So, yeah, I'd have to say he's probably one of the lock-ins for the free hit.
And on to our third and final striker. It's a bit of a controversial one, to be fair, which is weird to say it because this man has been an electric form this season. It's Harry Kane, 200 points. And I think if Erling Haaland isn't in the Premier League this season, we'd be talking a lot more highly of Harry Kane. But the sad thing is that he's playing for Tottenham Hotspur, who are the most hot and cold team in the Premier League right now. Obviously, that loss to Bournemouth, Kane didn't even get involved in terms of the goals. Is he worth having on the free hit, or is it worth just spreading those funds around the team, getting an Andrew Robertson in, getting another £8 million midfielder like maybe Cody Gakpo or something? Ben, what's the thoughts?
It's a really, really difficult one because he's going to be quite highly owned. But again, it's Newcastle away, and that's a tough fixture, it has to be said. Yeah, it's really a 50-50 call with this one because if you need to spread the funds just a little bit to get your ideal free hit team, I think Kane would be the guy that you'd probably sell to do that. But again, it's that risk versus reward. I think I'd prefer Trippier in over Kane this week because Newcastle was so good at home and Spurs are typically so poor at retaining possession, and Newcastle, you could see them sort of potentially run away with it, which is crazy to say. So it may be an avoid this week on the free hit.
Yeah, and also what makes your decision easier with Harry Kane is that there are so many forward options that you can choose from. You could also play a 5 in midfield as well. Like we mentioned, the likes of Elise, Gakpo, Jota, Diaz, any of the Liverpool midfielders. You could get Nunez up top. You could get Tony. So there are a plethora of options to choose from. And if you're wanting to sell him, it does make it that bit easier. And also, we saw what Newcastle did to Man United at home. A couple of weeks ago, United in good form, 2-0 win there. So it wouldn't shock me if Newcastle just shut up shop, get a 1-0, 2-0 win against this Spurs side with the way they're playing at the moment.
All right, so this is what the bench is set up like at the moment. Now, looking at the players, we wouldn't recommend investing this much in a free hit bench. For any free hit, it's probably worth having maybe one player sort of first on the bench, such as an Andreas, a Zuma, or a Mitchell, one of these three as your first bench player, just in case one of these guys doesn't play. Of course, Konate's yellow flag tonight, but he's playing. So he could pick up an injury tonight or something. And there could be sort of an unexpected sort of injury elsewhere that we don't hear about in the press conferences. So I'd invest your money in one player on the bench and the rest, keep it as cheap as possible because it allows you to put as much money as possible into that starting 11.
Yeah, and for these players on the bench, they are just other decent options that you could potentially have even in your starting 11 if you want to. Obviously, Iverson is probably the best backup goalkeeper choice, 3.8 million. I know Leicester are absolutely terrible in terms of keeping clean sheets at the moment, but he will just, get that 1-2 pointer on the bench just in case your starting goalkeeper doesn't play for any reason. We mentioned Tyrick Mitchell at the top. Him or Gahey, both really good options if you're looking to play the Palace defender ahead of Sam Johnson. Andreas Pereira, I personally think that Fulham side, a Fulham midfielder, could be a really nice differential this week. Between him, Willian, Harry Wilson, those three looked electric at the weekend. And against this Leeds side, I think anything can happen. And I think Fulham are a really probably an underdog side and probably a team that not many people will choose from. Ben, what's your thoughts on Fulham at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, Fulham sort of they've been so red hot sort of over sort of until a few weeks ago that you would pick them. But of course, I think Andreas is the sort of guy that you'd look to go for with Leeds at home. It's a great fixture to have, especially in a free hit and at 4.3 million. So if you are sort of spending all your budget and all your players and are looking a little bit short for cash, then I think Andreas is actually a really good option. Leeds are not very good defensively at all. In fact, probably I'd say they're one of the worst teams for defense in the league. And going to Fulham is not going to be easy for them. So yeah, Andreas would be a great shout for a cheap budget enabler in that midfield.
Yeah, I think Leeds rank 18th for expected goals conceded since the World Cup. So literally a relegation zone in terms of defence. So really good team to target if you're looking for some differential points. You're looking to boost those ranks. I think Andreas and anyone in that Fulham attack, especially Harry Wilson since he came back, looks really dangerous. And finally, we've got Kurt Zouma. I think West Ham is an interesting one to look at. Obviously, Bournemouth away. Bournemouth are playing really well at the moment. We haven't even touched on Bournemouth, to be fair. But West Ham do have Europe in the week on the Thursday. Then they have this game on the Sunday. Do you think that's going to play any effect on this West Ham team? And do you think maybe these Bournemouth assets like Solanke, Billing, they're the ones to target instead?
Yeah, I think potentially that the fixture is there for Bournemouth. They've looked great in recent weeks, whereas West Ham haven't looked too good at all. Yeah, I mean, I don't trust them as much away from home, bizarrely. I know they beat Fulham, but they got absolutely battered in that game. So I trust West Ham more if that was a home fixture, but because it's an away fixture, I maybe would sort of lean a little bit clear of going for any West Ham assets. There's much more sort of template options that are safer and have got a higher ceiling than someone like Kurt Zouma.
Okay, so that wraps up our free hit draft. It's not maybe the best free hit draft, but it gives you a great idea as to who to bring in, who to start, all that sort of stuff. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel to see our team reveals and our transfer targets if you're not playing your free hit later on this week, as we'll be doing a triple upload. Look at us being dedicated to the YouTube squad, man.
Wow. And yeah, have a look. It's a good basis for your free hit template. And yeah, let us know if we've missed anyone out. There's sort of some differentials that you're potentially looking at this week and going, hang on, these guys could do well. Let us know anyway. And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
later. Have a good game week, everyone.